Takulandirani ku AMTV Malawi kuchimake kwa nkhani zenizeni. Ngati nkhani imeneyo kuno kulibe, dziwani kuti nkhani imeneyo ndi yabodza.
Honour members and the principal officer for the fund, welcome to Parliament. On the onset, allow me to apologize because we called you the other day, but because of the number of stakeholders, you went back and attended, and the other day it happened the same because of the volume of stakeholders that we've had. Kindly accept the apology from the committee for behaving in that way, but we had no choice but to ensure that you appear because you are one of the people who are critical in the whole transaction. So kindly take it that way. We will proceed in this manner. Other members will introduce themselves. After that, I will give you a chance to introduce yourself and give you space to provide your submission or to speak to your submission. When you're done, other members shall be given time to ask questions where you'll be given chance to respond. In the event that you feel that other questions you can't take, you're free to indicate. And in the event that you feel that there's something that you want to tell this committee, you're also free to do that by highlighting some of the things that you feel are important for this committee. When the members ask questions, we expect that you're going to address them by the constituency because they are in this room as representatives of the people who are currently providing an oversight role. So, for example, Blantyre Chiromoni, you know him by name, but respond to him in terms of the constituency. You know me from the other side, but I'm sitting here as a chairperson, and we will call each other on that note. Other members, can we introduce ourselves? We'll start from Lilongwe East.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, my name is Young Piri, representing the people of Lilongwe East. Thank you.
Honorable Chairperson, through you, representing the people of Mulanje South East, Buka Matemvu. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Ivua Gaunda, MP for Nkatabe Central. Thank you, sir.
Through you, Honorable Chairperson, my name is Santiago Samson Piri, Member of Parliament for Mulanje South Constituency. Thank you.
Good evening, Honorable Chair. My name is Macpherson Mwai Ndalama, representing the people of Chiladzo Nyungwe. Thank you.
Chair, my name is Best Ben Awali, Member of Parliament for Zomba City North. Thank you, Chair.
And I'm Amina Bajia, representing Zomba Sondoli. Thank you.
Through you, Chair, my name is Susan Tosi, Member of Parliament for Chipapa West. Thank you.
And through you, Chair, my name is Noroli Pipa, Member of Parliament for Blantyre City, Chiromoni, Kabula, and Choli constituency. Thank you.
Through you, Honorable Chairperson, I'm Nadine Carter, Parliament Secretariat.
Good evening, Honorable Chairperson. Mora Fiona Matenje, Parliament Secretariat.
Good evening, Honorable Chairperson. I'm Sangwani Puri, Parliament Secretariat. Thank you.
Good evening, Honorable Chairperson. I'm Isabel Tambala, Parliament Secretariat.
Through your chair, I'm Lawrence Chakakala Chazie, Lilongwe Chilobwe constituency.
Other members and the suspended principal officer for the fund, my name is Stephen Baba Marondera Kansiamo. I'm the chairperson of Public Accounts Committee and a member of Parliament for Lilongwe Nyanja constituency. Before you introduce yourself, allow me to give space to media because whatever we are discussing here, people or Malawians are supposed to know because we're operating using the tax. Media, can you introduce yourself?
Good evening, Chair, honorable members. My name is Nshindi Meki from Nation Publications Limited.
My name is Trust Office from MPC. Good evening, Chair. My name is Gift Kalonga from Lunta TV.
Good evening. My name is Henry Malunga from Lunta TV.
Thank you, colleagues from media. This time, allow me to give you a chance to introduce yourself. Over to you, former principal officer.
Good evening, Chairperson, honorable members, and distinguished members of the press. My name is George Jim, the principal officer for the Public Service Pension Trust Fund, suspended one. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. We'll proceed in this manner. We'll ask our secretariat to help you take off. As soon as we're done with that, we'll get into serious business. Our secretariat, kindly administer oath.
I, George M. Jim, do solemnly swear by the Almighty God that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
Thank you so much, Secretariat, for such a noble job. Controlling Officer, I would like to appreciate especially you, Mr. Jim, because you are appearing before the committee today. You are appearing before Public Accounts Committee as the suspended principal officer for the fund. Your committee, Public Accounts Committee, has a volume of documents, including your own detailed submission that you gave us as Public Accounts Committee, having wrote to you to appear before this committee regarding the purchase of Amaris Hotel by the fund. You may recall that you've been with the fund for most that period. So we feel that you are key in giving us information so that as your committee, we get to understand some of the things that actually happened and how they happened. The events that led to the professional recommendation to be rejected, then you know, all those things being sidelined when they were coming from professionals. So we would like to understand from you as a suspended principal officer for the fund. At this point, allow me to give you space to speak to your submission. The other members will come after you're done with your submission. Over to you, Principal Officer for the fund.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, and all members of the committee present here, members of the media present tonight, and all protocols observed. Chair, I would like to thank you and your committee for giving me this opportunity to have an interface in relation to the Amaris transaction. My presentation will be done in such a way that it will give a broader timeline of events in terms of the chronological order. However, you also note that some other events will be overlapping because they were happening simultaneously to the issues pertaining to the governance lapses that have happened between 2024 and 2025. And I'll also touch on the bit of the clarifying issues that I would like to present in terms of the misconceptions that are out there in terms of the governance issues. So I will tie into the specifics that have been requested to speak to. So Chair and Committee, the issues that have been asked to speak to are 3 or 4-fold. These are mainly to provide an explanation of my role in the meeting of the 6th March 2024 and any guidance that I personally conveyed to the OPC senior officials present at that meeting. Secondly, is to submit copies of all communication exchanged by Yusuf Investment Limited and its representatives. Thirdly, is to explain any follow-up actions that were undertaken by myself or my office after the 6th March 2024 meeting, and to provide copies of any documents or records in my possession concerning the Amaris Hotel transaction. Chair, also on the outset, I would like to point out the role of the principal officer. I've heard a lot of misconceptions that are out there in terms of what are the roles of the principal officer. So apart from ensuring compliance to regulatory requirements, what other key role of the principal officer is to hold all the correspondences between the board and its stakeholders. So in this case, all the correspondences, let's say for instance from the fund managers, they come through the board, they come to the board through the office of the principal officer. So basically, that's the role of the principal officer in this case, more especially looking at the issue at hand. Apart from giving advice to the board, basically, all these correspondences are also supposed to be analyzed by Secretariat. Again, Chair, I would like to clarify on the signing arrangement, as I've highlighted that the principal officer does not have the voting right at the board. I would draw your attention to the trust deed, Article 15.12, where it stipulates about the signing arrangement of the board. I've been following keenly, Chair, the proceedings of this committee, so I've heard a number of misconceptions. But Chair, I would like to clarify before this committee, since I've been with the fund from 2017 up to 2025. When the fund was being conceived, it started its operations under the Ministry of Finance in the Pension Directorate. By that time, the staff was mainly seconded staff from the Ministry of Finance. So from my recollection, that time there were 3, if not 4, staff members in the fund. But if you look at the trust deed, as I'm saying, Article 15.12, it stipulates that the signing arrangement is in such a way that contracts or board resolutions are supposed to be signed by the board chair and the fund secretary. So as I'm highlighting that during inception of the fund, there were basically 3, if not 4 staff members that were seconded. There was no fund secretary. Most of the staff that is there has been recruited from 2021. So during that time, the tradition was that the contracts or the resolutions were being signed by the chairperson and the vice chairperson. Moving forward, there was a time when we did not have the vice chairperson, left the fund. In that case, the resolutions or contracts were supposed to be signed by the chairperson and the relevant chairperson of the committee, particular committee in question. So I'm just bringing this up, Chair, so that maybe it is clarified from the outset that the principal officer does not have the voting right or does not make any decisions concerning the board matters. Chair, now let me go through the submission that I presented before the committee. I'm sure as you highlighted that the submission was presented or handed to the committee prior to this engagement for ease of the engagement or the interface that we're having tonight. So my presentation will start with a background from the time that the investment in question was brought to the fund. I will not belabor the point because I know that previous presenters before me have already made presentations and introductions to the how the investment came into being. However, I will just have a brief overview so that it ties into the presentation that I'm going to make in terms of the correspondences that were there between my office and Yusuf Investment Limited. Chair, I'll start from the 18th of May 2023, where the fund held an extraordinary meeting of investment, where this investment opportunity was presented. This was brought to the fund from one of our investment managers, which is Nico Asset Managers. They brought 3 investment opportunities to the fund. One of them was Select Financial Service Limited, whereby they floated 49% equity with an indicative value of 11 billion to the fund. The other investment opportunity was Select Service Financial Limited. This was a corporate bond of up to 2 billion. The third investment was the Amaris Hotel Limited, which at this point it was 100% equity with an indicative value of 47 billion. The committee expressed interest in the Amaris Hotel investment, and they recommended the fund manager to conduct valuations accordingly. So 2 property valuations and 1 business valuation were undertaken to guide the committee's decision. A site visit by the Finance, Audit and Risk Management Committee and the Investment Committee were also undertaken to appreciate this investment opportunity. The review established the following in terms of the valuations. The Garden City land value was at 1.9 billion, infrastructure for the 8.9 billion, with a total market value of 50 billion and a replacement cost of 87 billion. Knight Frank land valuation was at 1.2 billion, infrastructure was at 47.7 billion, with a total market value of 48 billion and a replacement cost of 79 billion. Now, in terms of the business valuation, which was conducted by FDH Bank, the business was valued between 26 billion and 35 billion with a net asset value of 50 billion. To this effect, Chair and committee members, in September 2023, the manager recommended that the fund acquire the hotel at less than 42 billion and for less than 100% ownership in order to minimize single asset concentration, and a strategic partner with Umozi or Sunbed was also suggested at this point in time. With both parties having expressed interest, this recommendation was on conditional upon commissioning a structural integrity report. Negotiations commenced and a price of 47 billion was proposed at that point in time. However, the seller later requested for a 30% upward adjustment, citing the Kwacha devaluation that happened at that time. However, the fund rejected the request and the price was maintained at the proposed amount. Moving forward, Chair and the committee, in January 2024, at the 5th Extraordinary Board meeting, my office, the Principal Officer's Office, presented a letter from Nico Asset Management that is dated 19th December 2023, which communicated to the fund that the investment manager was withdrawing its recommendation to invest in the Amaris Hotel, citing a number of reasons, which included insufficient technical review for such a significant investment, to provide the required assurance that is in the best interest of the fund. Again, another reason that was presented was a lack of due diligence by an industry expert, that is a hotelier, so to speak. The other reason that was also presented was the absence of a strategic partner and an identified operator to operate the hotel. So the board subsequently resolved to withdraw from the transaction from this 5th Extraordinary Board meeting with the minutes attached in the Appendix 1 in the pack that I provided, Chair. On 12th February 2024, NAM was communicated to relay the message to Yusuf Investment Limited with a letter dated 12th February 2024, attached as well in the pack that I provided, labeled Appendix 2, which was communicating the resolution that was done by the fund. Chair, I will now proceed to item number 2, which is one of the key items that I'm requested to speak to. This is the Nzuzu meeting, which was done on March 2024. So, Chair and committee members, on 5th March 2024, the Office of the President and Cabinet, through the SPC, Madam Colleen Zamba, summoned the fund to a meeting in Nzuzu. The invitation was through a text, WhatsApp text. That's also in the appendix, Appendix 3. Following the fund's area resolution not to proceed with the acquisition of the hotel, this meeting was called on 6th March 2024 at 23 p.m. and it was chaired by the SPC, Madam Colleen Zamba, as I alluded to earlier on. In attendance to this meeting were the OPC members, the Director of Legal Affairs, Mr. Chizaso Nyirongo, the Chief of Staff, Mr. Prince Kapondangaga, the Chief of Staff State Residences. The fund was represented by myself, the Principal Officer, and the Chair of Investment Committee, Mr. Boyd Hamera, at that time. The meeting agenda was basically threefold. The first item was that the fund was supposed to provide an overview of the fund itself, PSPTF. The second item was that the fund was supposed to present in terms of the governance structure of the fund. And thirdly, we were requested to provide the status of the fund's investment. So during this meeting, presentations were made covering the topics that I've highlighted. On the governance structure of the fund, the key item that was presented and was requested by the SPC to be presented was basically on the nomination of the trustees. Members from OPC were interested to understand how are the trustees nominated into the board. So a presentation was made that the composition of the fund is in such a way that we have 6 members from the employer side and 6 members from the employee side. And that the 6 members from the employee side are supposed to be nominated through the Ministry of Finance, through the Office of the Secretary to the Treasury. However, during the discussions, it transpired that the OPC indicated clearly that as a mother entity of all public entities, they were interested to be part and parcel of the nomination process of the trustees. On the part of the investments, a number of investment initiatives were also presented at that meeting, whereby the fund highlighted all infrastructure investments that have been bought by the fund, and even the agricultural investments that are also in possession of the fund. From this discussion, the SPC highlighted that they had received a demand letter from Yusuf Investment Limited, whereby they indicated that there was a pending litigation because of the transaction that stalled in 2023-24, as I highlighted that NICO withdrew the transaction. So this was presented at that meeting, indicating that the fund really need to proceed with the transaction just because there were pending litigations, and that the government did not want to be put in disrepute because of these litigations. So the team from the fund was advised to ensure that this transaction proceeds to avoid that litigation. So, Chair, I will also direct you to the report that has been submitted in Appendix 3, more especially to Section 6.0 of that attachment, whereby there was an action plan that the fund was supposed to follow to ensure that we really comply to what was discussed at the meeting. So one of the issues was that the fund should expedite the conclusion of the Amaris transaction, and a roadmap towards the acquisition should be developed and submitted to OPC. This was supposed to be submitted to the Director for Legal Services, Mr. Chizaso Nyirongo, and comfort letters should be issued to the seller to manage the lender's pressure that was there. And the weekly progress updates should be provided to Mr. Chizaso Nyirongo, and the fund should engage an investment manager to facilitate the completion of the transaction. So the outcome of this meeting was subsequently reported to the board during the 23rd ordinary board meeting, where the board basically resolved to maintain the status quo in line with the professional advice that was previously provided by NICO Asset Managers. Chair, I will move on to the events after the 6th of March 2024 meeting, whereby I indicated that there was an action plan that was developed at that meeting. Firstly, I think you noted that there was a question of providing the comfort letters to the seller to make sure that the pressure is managed from that end. So on 7th and 8th March 2024, a comfort letter and a commitment letter were dispatched to the seller under the directive of the Director of Legal Affairs, Mr. Chizaso Nyirongo, and Madam Colleen Zamba. Again, Chair and committee members, I will direct your attention to Appendix 4 in the pack that I provided to the committee for ease of following the discussion. So these letters were issued on the understanding that there had been a consultation with the chair of investment committee, Mr. Boyd Hamera, who was present at that meeting held in March 2024, and in line with the directive from the Office of the President and Cabinet. I'm highlighting this, Chair, because maybe a question would arise to say, under whose authority were these commitment letters or comfort letters dispatched? So I just wanted to point it to you that that was the directive, and under such mandate, that's how those commitment letters were dispatched. Chair, again, I would also like to point out on the outset as well that in hindsight, I acknowledge that maybe these commitment letters should not have been issued in that manner. I've indicated this. I think I'll explain in the subsequent presentation as I move forward the reason why I'm highlighting that on the outset. Again, I will move fast forward to say to ratify this or a remedial measure to this was done upon realizing that this wasn't the proper way of dispatching the letters. Legal advice was sought. Firstly, it was internal legal advice that was sought within the fund, and later, in October 2025, external legal advice was sought regarding the same. So, as I highlighted, Chair, that I'll expound more on this as I go through my presentation. But however, as I indicated that I will take you through the timeline of events, I will now go to the involvement of Continental Asset Management. I think you have heard from the previous presenters that from NAM, after it failed from NAM, the transaction now went to Continental Asset Management. So I want to talk a bit about the CAM involvement in the Amaris transaction. So basically, I think this came with the understanding that we gave advice in that meeting that there's no transaction that can go through without the involvement of the fund manager. So in this case, Cedar Capital, who was the arranger, or I should say who is the arranger of Yusuf Investment Limited, consulted Continental Asset Managers to take up the transaction. So this was done, and it was presented to the 23rd board meeting that was done in March or April, somewhere thereabouts. I will confirm on the dates. So Continental Asset Managers informed the board that they had been approached by Cedar Capital to take on the Amaris transaction. So the board requested Continental Asset Management to conduct an independent analysis into this matter. Again, Chair, I think you and your committee would also be asking to say why was CAM taking up the investment when NICO already had withdrawn from the investment. Chair, I would like to indicate that these fund managers, they work independently from each other. So the board could not deny an investment that came with a different fund manager, because at this point, the idea was that they would maybe come up with a different philosophy or maybe different parameters or variables that they would use to engage the seller and come up probably maybe with a different analysis altogether. So again, that's how maybe you would note that the board categorically indicated that Continental Asset Management had to use their own independent analysis, not by relying on the analysis that was done by the previous fund manager. So I just wanted to make that clarification moving forward. So this assessment was partially done by Continental Asset Management, and they presented their findings with approximately 36 billion as the projected price that they envisaged, with a payback period of 36 years and a profitability after 40 years, which was significantly outside the acceptable benchmarks for the hotel investment, which should basically not go over and above 20 years of profitability period. Again, Chair, Continental Asset Managers proposed to act as a lead advisor at a fee of 1% of the transaction value, which basically meant that we had to give them an extra fee over and above their management fees that we already give them, which was in excess of 400 million. And again, they also disclosed a potential conflict of interest as their sister company was a lender to the seller. Although Continental indicated that this would not affect their judgment, the fund did not proceed due to the conflict of interest that was raised by the fund manager and the high advisory fee that was proposed at this point, which was unfavorable investment outlook for the fund. Chair, while on the same, on 8th October 2024, the fund through Continental Asset Management received letters from Yusuf Investment Limited and National Bank requesting for a meeting with the fund to conclude the transaction. And a response from the fund was given through Continental Asset Management and through my office as well as the principal officer on 14th October 2024. Again, I think the letter is in the pack, that the call for the said meeting was premature because the fund was still sorting out its in-house issues, and therefore this had to be postponed until further notice. So, Chair, as I highlighted that some of these events will be overlapping, you could see that while we are discussing with Nico in terms of their analysis, letters started already flowing from the seller, Yusuf Investment Limited, coming to the fund through the office of the principal officer. So the proposal that Continental Asset Managers brought, the one that they were proposing for a 1% transaction fee, was officially rejected at the 9th Extraordinary Investment Committee meeting that was held on 10th October 2024. And the decision not to invest in Amaris remained, and this was communicated to Continental Asset Management on the 23rd October 2024. Again, a letter dated 23rd October 2024 is attached as Appendix 6 as well in the pack. Moving forward, on 19th November 2024, Yusuf Investment Limited wrote the fund again. So this letter was received by Secretariat in May 2025. Chair and committee, I think you need to take note of that. The letter was expressing its desire to conclude the investment. By this time, the fund had no board as it was dissolved by the OPC. The OPC was reminded that there was no board, and yet OPC insisted that the fund had to go and attend the meeting. So the point here is that the letter was received in November 2024 through the office of the President and Cabinet. To be specific, this letter, we got it from Mr. Chizaso Nyirongo. It got to the fund in May 2025, insisting that the fund still had to go and attend the meeting so that it resolves those issues that were being said in terms of the litigations, as it were. On 5th June 2025, the fund indeed attended the said meeting in question. The meeting was attended by myself, the principal officer, and Charity Gambatula, the planning and investment manager, and Nico Asset Management, CEO Daniel Dunga, and Memorage Bemberi, the company secretary. And on the seller's part, there was Cedar Capital, represented by Armstrong Camponi. There was also Shiraz Yusuf, the chairman of Amaris Investment, and Yusuf, the CEO of the Amaris Investments. The minutes of this meeting have been attached as well in the pack. These minutes are draft minutes, raw minutes. I think I've attached 2 sets of minutes because they drafted the minutes, they sent to us to give our input. So you would note that the first set of minutes are raw minutes without our input, and the other set is the one that we imputed our comments. So, Chair, you will note that in the minutes, there was insistence by the seller for us to conclude the transaction. And consistently, the fund gave the advice to say there was no way that as Secretariat we would give that direction to say that we're going to conclude the transaction in the absence of the board. And again, Secretariat highlighted that all investments are supposed to be anchored by a fund manager. So at this point, we had no fund manager who was supposed to anchor this investment. As I highlighted that NICO had already withdrawn, and Continental Asset Managers were communicated that the fund would not proceed, engaging them to proceed with this particular transaction. So you would note that we were dragged into a meeting whereby we could not provide any meaningful input because at that time there was that absence of board members. So this was the case because there was that insistence from the legal services director, Mr. Jizaso Nyirongo, that we still need to proceed and have that audience with the seller. Chair, having said that, let me take you to the now issues of the board transition and the governance lapses that I indicated earlier on, because this forms part of these correspondences that I'm talking about, and you could see how they are tying into each other. So, Chair, the tenure of the second cohort of trustees ended in September 2024. With an extension that was requested from the regulator of financial institution. I've also attached a letter dated 26th September 2024 and a letter dated 12th November 2024 as Appendix 7. The recruitment process for the third cohort commenced in June 2024. This was the case, Chair, because we have noted with experience that if we delay in starting soliciting nominees from different MDAs, it takes a bit longer. So this process started in June 2024, and the nominated individuals were duly licensed by the regulator of financial institutions on 19th December 2024. So the names of trustees that were licensed on 19th December 2024 are Levson Chira, Lenius Dayton, Edward Shafi, Angela Kaunda, Arthur Manyunya, Idris Samwale, Bernard Nyondo, Brazil Mpepo, Yona Piri, Precious Chimbamba, Mwai Meki, Ngombe, and Richard Zimba. So, Chair, on 12th March 2025, the Office of the President and Cabinet wrote a letter to the fund raising concerns regarding the constitution of the third cohort and requested my office to write a comprehensive report of the recruitment process. So, Chair and committees, mind you, this time, as I highlighted that these trustees were licensed in December 2024, they had started working after we did our orientations and inductions. And then that's when we were having, we got that letter on 12th March 2025 from the Office of the President and Cabinet indicating that they do not recognize this cohort of trustees. So for the sake of ease of following, I'll call this cohort 3.1 cohort of trustees, because moving forward, you will note that there will now come another cohort of trustees. So the fund subsequently sought regulatory guidance on 14th March 2025 from the Registrar of Financial Institutions and submitted a report at the same time to the Office of the President and Cabinet on 19th March 2025 with a copy to the Ministry of Finance reporting on the recruitment process and how it was done. This is attached as an Appendix 8. Chair, at this point, we sought a regulatory guidance just because we noted that there was an anomaly in terms of the recruitment process in the direction it was taking now, because according to our trust deed, we know that the policyholder of the fund is the Ministry of Finance through the ST. But this time around, when we got the letter, which was a bit emotional, indicated that they do not recognize this, and that a comprehensive report has to be submitted because they noted that some of the nominees that they nominated from the office of the president and cabinet did not make it into that cohort of trustees. So that comprehensive report basically indicated the reasons why the nominees that the OPC wanted did not make it into the board. So some of the reasons why these nominees did not make it into the 3.1 cohort of trustees was because some of the members did not provide the Credit Reference Bureau report, which is a requirement for the fit and proper requirement for the Reserve Bank when they want to license a trustee. So let me just highlight on that one that every trustee is licensed as an individual based on the fit and proper requirement that has been put in place by the regulator, the financial institutions. So the other item that the other members did not include, the police clearance report, which is also a mandatory requirement for a trustee to be licensed, and others did not include their academic certificates.
Mulanje Controlling Officer, or just what? Mulanje Southeast, what has gone out of order?
Through you, Honorable Chairperson, throughout the presentation, the stakeholder has highlighted references to documents in his submission. And I noticed that he has not attached the letter that came from OPC rejecting the nominees, and the comprehensive report that he submitted is not attached. Through you, Chairperson.
Mulanje Southeast, you may take note that the day he was to appear, and due to time, we sent him back, but he had submitted. So I'm having the copy here, unless if yours doesn't have, but otherwise he submitted. So what we'll do, I'll ask, because we still have soft copies, what I'll do, in the meantime, we'll ask Secretariat to circulate that document. So honor members, you can check on the forum, the soft copy. That will have that. Secretariat, can you circulate the soft copy? Controlling Officer, kindly proceed.
Thank you very much, Chair and honorable members. I'll proceed to 14th of March 2025, where I indicated that the fund sought guidance from the regulator of financial institutions in its capacity as the fund's regulator to obtain direction on the appropriate action, course of action moving forward. So the regulator responded on 28th March 2025. In their response, the regulator advised that the board could not be considered duly constituted due to the non-recognition that the employer indicated. Therefore, the board becomes unattainable. To that effect, the fund was advised to provide new names to the regulator for licensing by 30th June 2025. Again, this has been attached as Appendix 9, both letters, 14th March 2025 and 28th March 2025. The request from the fund and the response that we got from the regulator of financial institutions, indicating that now the board becomes unattainable at that point. On the same, as per the requirement from the regulatory entity, we are supposed to retain the licenses of the trustees that...
Controlling Officer, may I hold? Honor members, are we on page? Can you check? Controlling Officer, kindly proceed. So due to network, but otherwise it has been sent on the forum. So just keep checking. Controlling Officer, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair and honorable members. So, as I indicated that we sought guidance from the regulator, and the response that we got was that since the employer does not recognize that cohort of trustees, it therefore now becomes, the board becomes unattainable, and that we need to get fresh nominees from the employer. On 12th March 2025, the fund solicited nominees from the employer side through Mr. Chizaso Nyirongo, who was at this time now the focal person from the Office of the President and Cabinet in this effect, since we got that letter, which categorically indicated that we now need to get nominees from the Office of the President and Cabinet. So Mr. Chizaso Nyirongo nominated trustees from the Office of the President and Cabinet side. These names include Dr. Maxwell Tsitsi, Mrs. Irene Chikapa, Chikondi Piri. And on 2nd June 2025, Dr. Maxwell Tsitsi nominated Mr. Chizaso Nyirongo as a nominee to be a name to be submitted for vetting to the regulator of financial institutions. And these nominees were licensed on 15th July 2025. Letters dated 12th May 2025 and 2nd June 2025 have also been attached as Appendix 11, Chair. Chair, I will proceed to 15th July 2025, whereby the fund now wrote to the Ministry of Finance requesting for a formal instrument of appointment, highlighting the governance concerns arising from the delays of having a board in place. Chair, this was done basically because we had an issue with the Office of the President and Cabinet, Mr. Chizaso Nyirongo, to be specific, because in their letter, they mentioned that the fund proceeded giving the licenses to the 3.1 cohort of trustees without seeking that appointment instrument from the employer. So to avoid the very same mistake this time around, Chair, that's why we wrote the Minister of Finance to provide that instrument of appointment. I'm just trying to highlight this because there are some sentiments in other quarters to say that the Office of the Principal Officer deliberately sabotaged the system so that maybe we make some other dubious payments in the absence of the board. But I just want to take you through the process in terms of how it works so that maybe members and the general public understands how these things work. So that's what happened at that point in time, Chair and honorable members. This communication was also copied to the Office of the President and Cabinet, the one that we were requesting for the instrument of appointment. Then later, a reminder was issued again on 5th August 2025, a letter dated 5th August attached as well as Appendix 12, whereby this time around we were requesting for, we were actually reminding the employer on the instrument of appointment. And in that letter, Chair, if you go through, I indicated the challenges that the fund was having at that particular point in time in terms of the governance lapses, because there was a vacuum in terms of oversight. So that letter clearly stipulates the challenges that the fund was facing at that particular point in time. And moving forward.
Controlling Officer, is that Appendix 12 or 11? Come out clear on that one?
Chair, from my presentation, it's indicated Appendix 12. I'm not so sure in terms of alignment in the pack that you have.
That should be, for records sake, 11 on the pack that you shared. You may wish to edit that one because you're looking at reminder of request for formal appointment instrument. So in our documents, it's 11, not 12. For our members, you may check on the same as well, so that we're not lost as we proceed. So you may wish also, for the sake of your records, to edit that one in terms of submissions. You may wish to proceed.
Thank you very much, Chair, for that correction. Chair, allow me to proceed. From that submission, a formal instrument of appointment was then later issued, and moving forward, an orientation session for the trustees was now slated whereby all service providers were invited, including the regulator, to give the trustees an overview of how the fund functions, and all the stakeholders did make their presentations to that effect. And this was conducted on 4th to 5th September 2025. Chair, allow me to move forward a bit in terms of re-engagement of NICO Asset Management in 2025 at the side meeting that I mentioned that we got a letter dated November 2024, and it got to the fund in May 2025. During this time, on 9th May 2025, the fund received that correspondence, as I indicated, via OPC through Mr. Chisaso Nyirongo from Yusuf Investment Limited.
Controlling officer, can you come again? So what you're telling this committee is instead of Yusuf Investment engaging you directly, started bypassing you, getting to OPC, then OPC communicating to you. Is this what you're telling this committee?
Yes, Chair.
At that stage, you didn't have a legal service manager?
The legal services manager was there, Chair.
So how is this? Anyway, maybe I will give you time to. Can you wrap up? Because I was not sure. Because at this stage, in my view, looking at how it's supposed to happen, there was no need for OPC to appear at this stage. Because basically you were supposed to engage, and at the same time engage the Amaris, and at the same time get reference from Minister of Finance as is reflected in the law. So there was that bypass. As you wrap up, please highlight everything. Maybe how many minutes do you want this committee to give you? So that
maybe 10 minutes, Chair.
We'll give you 20.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chair, I'll proceed. As I highlighted that we got that communication through the Office of the President, insisting that we still need to go and attend that meeting. So a meeting was subsequently held in Blantyre, attended by myself and NICO Asset Management, during which at this meeting, it was clearly communicated that the fund could not make any decision in absence of a board on 5th June 2025, as it is in the draft minutes that are provided as an attachment or Appendix 14, if I'm not mistaken, again, Chair, in terms of the arrangement of the appendices. The minutes have been indexed as Appendix 14 in my submission.
I think you were leaving a page ahead, so it should be 13.
13.
Yeah, so
apologies for that, Chair.
But it's fine. It's fine. You've submitted a lot of documents, and looking at the time that we gave you, such things are bound to happen. We will just premise our arguments based on the facts that you've presented, contained in the appendix that you've submitted to this committee. So you may wish to proceed with that comfort without having issues to think otherwise. Proceed, Controlling Officer.
Thank you very much, Chair. So again, maybe a question that would arise from the committee would be that at this time, you've already heard that NICO Asset Management had already withdrawn.
Controlling Officer, there's a point of order from Mulanje Southeast. Mulanje Southeast, what has gone out of order?
Honorable Chairperson, is it in order for the stakeholder to preempt us by thinking what we're going to ask instead of just him presenting his side of the story? Chairperson, will you accordingly guide the stakeholder? Thank you.
Controlling Officer, the former principal officer or the suspended principal officer, kindly take note of the issue which has been raised by Mulanje Southeast. Let's not debate in anticipation or discuss anything in anticipation. The rest you leave to the committee. Where it feels it has to ask, it shall do the same. Over to you, Controlling Officer.
Thank you very much, Chair and honorable members. I'll proceed as guided. So this time, Chair, Nico Asset Managers was approached to solely provide an advisory role, given that they had a prior involvement in the transaction. However, this was solely for advisory purposes, so to speak. So moving forward, Nico requested that if the fund still wanted us to engage at this level, it was wise and prudent that the fund was supposed to write Nico Asset Managers to have an advisory role, lead advisory role in that aspect. So the fund indeed wrote. However, NAM still declined to re-engage as a lead advisor as per the letter dated 12th July 2025, attached as Appendix 14 in this case, citing that based on their previous advice, they still have to maintain the status quo and that they can't be engaged as a lead advisor. So in this case, Nico was dropped at that point.
Controlling officer, because of the nature of our engagements and the decisions around this Nico Asset Manager Limited, I think it's very critical. I would like to ask you to go through the letter. Can you read that letter that you've submitted to Parliament? So before we proceed.
So this letter from Nico Asset Managers? Okay.
The one where you're referencing appointment of Nico Asset Managers Limited to carry out advisory role on the Amaris transaction. Can you go through that one?
Chair, the letter reads, appointment of Nico Asset Managers Limited to carry out advisory work on the Amaris transaction. We refer to your letter dated 9th June 2025 on the above matter. As you are aware, through our letters dated 19th December 2023 and 23 January 2024, Nico Asset Managers Limited advised that following an integral governance review of the Amaris transaction, it was resolved that NAM withdraws its recommendation and further involvement in the transaction in the best interest of the fund. The key reasons cited were that for such a significant investment, there was not adequate technical review to provide the required assurance that the investment was in the best interest of the Public Service Pension Trust Fund. There should have been due diligence of the transaction by a hotel expert, and thirdly, the absence of such due diligence and identification of a strategic partner exposed the fund to a significant operational and financial risk. As you are aware, the fund advised through its letter dated 12 February 2024 that due to NAM's withdrawal from the transaction, all costs associated therefore be borne by Nico Asset Managers. NAM reimbursed all the costs incurred by the fund, amounting to 85.2 million, and this marked the final closure of NAM's involvement in the transaction. The position of NAM has not changed since, and we regret to advise that NAM is not able to accept the appointment to carry out the advisory work on the transaction. Yours sincerely, Daniel Dunga, Chief Executive.
I deliberately asked you to go through that letter because in my view and in the view of the committee, it is very important in how the transaction went on in its maturation. So that's why I really wanted you to come out clear, because this letter, as of 21 July 2025, you were addressed and it was, they were requesting you to provide guidance. But we'll get to that level as a committee later on. You may proceed, Controlling Officer.
Thank you very much, Chair and honorable members. I will proceed to tackle the third cohort of trustees, meetings and activities. In the similar manner, Chair, going through the timeline of sequencing, on 25th September 2025, another letter was sent to the fund from the seller through the board chairperson, now Mr. Chizaso Nyirongo, copying the chairperson for investment, Mr. Idris Amwali, requesting for a status update on Amaris Hotel equity transaction. This is marked as appendix 4 in the submission. And again, Chair, on 29th September 2025, the fund responded with a letter without prejudice, that is appendix 15, mentioning that the board had just been duly constituted and that once the deliberations of the board starts, this matter will be tabled for the board's guidance and direction, as it were. This letter is attached as appendix 15. The Secretariat subsequently represented the matter at the 28th Investment Committee meeting held from 2nd to 3rd October.
Controlling Officer, Mulanje West, Mulanje South, you may excuse yourself, maybe just to have a break outside, please. Controlling Officer, kindly proceed.
All right, thank you, Chair and members. The Secretariat provided a comprehensive briefing on the transaction from the inception to date at that particular point in time, and reiterated the previous board's resolution not to proceed with the investment. Following deliberations, the committee resolved to reaffirm its earlier decision, noting the absence of any new assessments, recommendation, or professional advice to justify proceeding with the investment. The potential litigation issue by Yusuf Investment Limited was also considered at this particular meeting, and the committee resolved that the matter be referred to the Governance and Legal Committee for further review. Chair, I will take you to 6th October 2025, whereby the fund received another letter that was issued to the fund with attention to the board chairperson and chairperson for investment as well, mentioning that my earlier letter was inadequate because it fell short of mentioning the actual timelines for completion of the transaction. So this is in reference to the letter that my office wrote on 29th September 2025, whereby I mentioned that the committees or the board were just newly constituted and that they needed to deliberate on the issues. However, as you can see here, Chair, that on 6th October, we got a response from Yusuf Investments indicating that that letter was inadequate. So the board chairperson requested that I draft another letter in response to the seller's request. Chair, at this point, the board chairperson subsequently traveled to Salima for the purpose of having this letter signed by myself. However, I raised reservations regarding this course of action, noting that it would be premature to over-engage further with the seller before the completion of the internal processes, as it were. Chair, you note that there was insistence from the board chair that I still needed to sign to overcommit, but with experience, I noted in hindsight that probably this would not be the best idea, as I highlighted that the committees were still meeting and deliberating on the same. So my advice at that point in time was that if we could wait for the committees to deliberate, more especially the Legal and Governance Committee, because the issue was now presented to them to deliberate and give probably the best advice in this case, because the issue now was to do with the litigation, as the board chair always insinuated.
Controlling Officer, looking at the documental evidence that you've submitted to this committee and the allegation that you've just made, that you had guided the board chair who had traveled just to force you to sign, did you at any point put that in lighting so that it formed the basis of your future undertakings? Or did you drop an email, just a formal email or a memo?
Chair, at this point, I think communication was through WhatsApp messages, whereby to me, at that time, he indicated that he's going to share the draft on WhatsApp so that I will need to sign that draft later. So I indicated at that meeting in Salima, we were together, the three of us, the board chairperson, the chair for investment, I indicated to the chair investment that if they wanted me to sign that letter with the reservations that I indicated, it was best that they drop me an email and copy the chairperson for Legal and Governance Committee so that I act on the instruction that they were supposed to give at that particular moment in time. But to my surprise, that never happened.
You may wish to proceed. Your committee has taken note. Kindly proceed.
Thank you, Chairperson. So, Chair, that was where I was going to mention that this actually, that's what marked the end of the correspondences between my office and Yusuf Investment Limited. At that point, I wasn't so sure as to whether that letter was dispatched or not. So I wouldn't be able to confirm whether this letter was ultimately dispatched at that point in time. Chair, allow me now to proceed to the legal opinion on the purported transaction. At the request of the investment committee, as I highlighted, the meeting on 2nd October, Legal Service Division prepared a legal opinion on the implication of the withdrawal from the purported transaction between the fund and Yusuf Investment Limited. This opinion was presented to the Governance and Legal Committee on 8th October 2025 for consideration. The legal opinion concluded that no binding agreement existed between fund and the Yusuf Investment Limited. Therefore, by providing a basis for the fund to reassess its position regarding this transaction. In addition, the legal service manager recommended that we engage an external counsel to obtain an independent second opinion. The Governance and Legal Committee adopted this recommendation and directed that an external legal opinion be procured. Accordingly, a second opinion was obtained from Likongwe and Company on 20th October 2025 in an appendix. I think that is marked Appendix 5. So the findings of an external counsel were consistent with those of the Legal Services Division in the fund, affirming that no binding agreement existed between the fund and Yusuf Investment Limited. Likongwe and Company further advised that the correspondences issued by the fund did not constitute a legally binding commitment and that the fund could withdraw from the transaction without contractual breach. In the event of litigation by Yusuf Investment Limited, the firm indicated that the absence of a signed sale agreement or concluded contract would enable the fund to mount a strong defense. The assessment that was done in terms of the likelihood of success or failure of that position was at 80-20 in favor of the fund. So should the fund, it was highlighted also that should the fund not succeed in litigation, potential liabilities would likely be limited to legal costs or circumstances where Yusuf Investment Limited disposes of the hotel to a third party at a lower price than the previously contemplated with the fund. A court-awarded payment equivalent to the price differential. Both the internal and external legal opinions were subsequently submitted to the board for consideration in assessing the legal implications of the matter. So these opinions have also been submitted in the pack. Chair, I will move forward to the transition period, regime transition period, whereby the government issued a directive dissolving all the boards. Following this directive, the fund sought guidance from the Ministry of Finance in its capacity as the policyholder regarding the implementation of that directive. This request was informed by an understanding that previously the SPC had also indicated that it did not recognize the licensed trustees based on the representation from the employer and had called the dissolution of the board. So this was done to make sure that we comply with the directive and that we are not in breach of the directive that was given. So on 20th October 2025, an instruction was given to comply with the 7th October directive by suspending all board-related activities until further guidance was provided. However, this was just by word of mouth during the briefing that I had with the previous ST. That time it was Mr. Njati. During this meeting, I requested that a formal written communication to be furnished to my office so that I communicate the same to the board. The ST advised, however, to liaise with the Public Finance Management, that is PFM unit, in the Ministry of Finance. During that time, it was headed by Martha Chizimba, who was at that time drafting a memo to the minister to get guidance in terms of how institutions like ours could be treated in this particular directive that was given. So on October 23, 2025, the board chairperson issued a notice inviting all trustees and members of Secretariat to an extraordinary board meeting scheduled for 24th and 25th October 2025. The meeting initially failed to proceed due to the lack of quorum. This lack of quorum came into being because this directive that was issued by the Minister of Finance was communicated through the group, the WhatsApp group, whereby the board chair at that time requested that they needed a formal communication from the ST himself, but this time we did not have that communication. So the board chair proceeded to convene that meeting despite that area communication to say we treat that as a blanket directive. Subsequently, on 24th October 2025, the ST issued a letter dissolving the board as per attached appendix, and communication was dispatched accordingly. However, within hours, the decision was rescinded on the basis that it had been founded on wrong advice. And it was clarified that the board should continue discharging its duties without interruption, as per attached letter from the ST. So on the same day, Friday, 24th October 2025, a virtual session was subsequently called and convened at 16 hours, whereby the board chair insisted that since the quorum failed to be met in the morning hours, we still needed to proceed and have that meeting around 18 hours through a virtual platform to commence proceedings, which basically continued into the following day, which was a Saturday, 25th October 2025. So during this session, it was requested, actually my office was requested to provide clarification on the matters relating to the dissolution of the board that was communicated earlier on, among other issues. And it was clarified that this was based on the directive and instruction from the office of the ST, during which time it was Mr. Hedrick Njad, and it coincided basically with the transition period where a new ST took over office. The next agenda item during that meeting was now the issue of Amaris. At this point, the board chair requested that I give details in terms of the commitment letters that were issued by the fund. So at this point, I requested through the vice chairperson of the committee, Precious Chimbamba, at that point, that because we did not have an agenda that made us to declare the conflict of interest, at that point, I requested that the chair be recused because he was an interested party in the report that I was about to present. So the vice chairperson hesitated in making that request to the board chairperson. However, I proceeded to present that report, which made me to dispatch those commitment letters, which basically now is the issue to do with the 6th March 2024 meeting, whereby Mr. Chizaso Nyirongo was part and parcel of that meeting. So to my surprise, he feigned ignorance of this meeting taking place, citing that the report that I presented was unauthored, and therefore it wasn't actually the right report for him to adopt. So having presented that, the meeting was now curtailed, having noted that maybe he was conflicted in that area. The meeting was curtailed now to go to the discussion of the Amaris investment. During this time, Secretariat gave all the background on Amaris and how it was dropped. The Secretariat gave advice that at this point, the investment was not making much sense based on the previous expert advice that was given by the fund managers, the actuary, and the Secretariat analysis based on the concentration levels in the hospitality industry vis-a-vis our investment policy statement. Chair, as I highlighted in my introductory remarks, that as a secretariat, through my office, we also provide a bit of an analysis that would ease in the decision-making process of the board. So we also had that write-up as advice to the board to say that we, as the fund, we are over-concentrated in the hospitality industry at that point in time. So following these deliberations, the board still insisted that they passed a resolution mandating the investment committee to undertake further analysis with a view to proceed with the transaction. So at this point, it was quite clear that Secretariat advice was disregarded, and the board, led by the chairperson, intended to proceed with the transaction. So the advice from Secretariat at this point was neither here nor there. Chair, moving forward, on 27th October, Monday, that's when now I received my suspension letter, which effectively marked the end of my involvement in the Amaris transaction, as well as all matters related to the fund. So in conclusion, Chair, because you asked me as well to give a detail of the advice that I gave throughout the correspondences and the interaction to do with the Amaris transaction. So to summarize, Chair, I would clarify to say that through and through Secretariat, through my office, we gave clear guidance to say this transaction was dropped based on the expert advice that was given from the previous fund managers, and that, based on the actuary advice, the fund was over-concentrated in the hospitality industry. Therefore, it was wise and prudent to first analyze those parameters before proceeding with the transaction. Again, the Secretariat advised that there's no way a transaction could go through without a fund manager who was supposed to anchor the investment in particular. So, Chair, in a nutshell, that's my submission to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you so much, the suspended principal officer for the fund, for your detailed submission. Other members, we've heard from the suspended controlling officer. So, Achikwawa West, what is out of order?
Thank you very much, Chair. The officer has just indicated that he received a suspension letter on 27th October 2025. Maybe for the benefit of the committee, can he read the letter that he received so that we should know what were the reasons that made him to be suspended? I submit, Chair.
Thank you so much, Chikwawa West, for that point of order. Point of order has been sustained. Controlling officer, or the suspended principal officer for the fund, can you read the letter that you received?
All right. Thank you very much, Chair and honorable members. The letter reads, Dear Mr. Jim, suspension from duty as principal officer. The Board of Trustees of the Public Service Pension Trust Fund convened at the 26th ordinary meeting from 24th to 25th October 2025 at Lifestyle Boutique Hotel in Lilongwe. Unanimously resolved to suspend you from exercising your duties as the principal officer of the fund. The basis for suspension is twofold. Firstly, the board of the fund has made the following observations. At the meeting of the investment committee on 2nd and 3rd October 2024 at Sigereke Hotel in Salima, the investment committee raised grave concerns regarding your misconduct and misrepresentation in relation to a matter under consideration by the committee. At that meeting, you misrepresented facts by disowning official correspondence exchanged between your office and the seller in that transaction, despite multiple letters authored and signed by your office as principal officer dating back to 2023. The board is aware that you subsequently accepted to have authored the letters and refuted to give a report when requested, but submitted a purported, unsigned, and unauthenticated record of a meeting in Nzuzu, where you allege that you were coerced to have written the letters. Your denial of this communication constitutes deceitful conduct and a serious breach of duty. It has further come to the board's attention that during the period of 13 months in which the fund operated without a constituted board, you continued engaging third parties, including Nico Asset Managers and the Continental Asset Managers, on serious board matters without authorization. These actions undertaken in isolation and without oversight represent a serious governance lapse and potential violation of the instruments that govern the business of the fund. The board also notes with deep concern that you approached a member of the ruling party, now a cabinet minister, and misrepresented that you were being coerced by operatives of the previous administration to conclude a transaction. This conduct reflects gross professional inappropriacy and a lack of institutional maturity, as it inappropriately politicized an administrative contractual matter of the fund, thereby risking erosion of confidence between the PSPTF and the government. Moreover, on Monday morning, 20th October 2025, you circulated to the board a communication purporting to cancel the board meeting scheduled for the 23rd and 24th October 2025, citing a Ministry of Finance directive dated 17th October 2025, which the board has learned was personally solicited and then collected by yourself, but was not immediately shared with the board despite earlier requests for the same. The board has since established that you authored and misrepresented the contents, and that led to the signing of this letter by the Secretary to the Treasury, thereby deceiving and misleading him at the Ministry of Finance. Your conduct was calculated to frustrate the lawful functioning of the board. You then used this letter at the start of the board meeting to suspend its commencement and conspired to ensure that certain trustees were unavailable with a deliberate intent of preventing the attainment of the quorum. This act not only undermined the authority of the board, but also chairman who was lawfully authorized to call the meeting. When the letter of 7th October 2025 was withdrawn by the Secretary to the Treasury at approximately 14 hours on 24th October 2025, the Secretary to the Treasury telephonically instructed you to contact all trustees whom you had influenced not to attend the meeting and to ensure their immediate participation. You did not comply with this request, and the meeting was subsequently adjourned. It was only at 18:15 hours in the evening that the board meeting was therefore duly convened with full attendance, and the board business proceeded lawfully. Your deliberate orchestration of this deception and obstruction of constitutes gross misconduct, abuse of office, and deceitful conduct towards both board and the Ministry of Finance, in violation of your responsibilities as the principal officer. Secondly, the board has become wary through the information from the Finance Audit and Risk Committee regarding the eligibility of some expenditures that were made by the fund during the period that there was no board in place. As such, the board has commissioned a forensic audit of the fund in order to appreciate the veracity of certain expenses before they are ratified by the board. The board finds that your conduct contravenes Article 11.2.2 of the Staff Terms and Conditions of Service of the Fund. Among other things are follows: deception and dishonesty conduct to the board, undermining the authority of the board, serious breach of the fund rules and operational procedures, insubordination, conspiring with others to undermine the authority of the board, threatening and unduly influenced board members, willful disobedience to lawful orders and instructions given by the board, doing, causing, permitting to be done, and conniving in acts which are prejudicial to the administration, discipline, or efficiency of the fund or any part of it. On account of the foregoing, in accordance with Article 11.4.1.5 of the Staff Terms and Conditions of Service, you are hereby suspended on full pay from exercising your duties for a period of 6 months, from 25th October 2025, in order to pave way for investigations and disciplinary proceedings accordingly. You are therefore required with immediate effect to cease performing any duties of the principal officer, refrain from engaging with any PSPTF counterparties, stakeholders, or staff, surrender all your fund property, documents, and access credentials to the investment planning manager of the fund, and refrain from accessing any of the fund offices or premises except with prior request or with prior consent of the board. The board shall, upon completion of its investigation into the matter, provide you with a detailed statement of allegations and invite you to respond to the said allegations in accordance with the fund's governance and disciplinary procedures. Chizaso Nyirongo, Chairman. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Suspended Principal Officer for Public Service Pension Trust Fund, Chikwawa West. You had raised that one. Any follow-ups, Chikwawa West?
Yes, Chair. Thank you very much. I was asking because I asked him to read the letter because I remember during the interface with the chair, he indicated that one of the reasons that the principal officer was suspended is because he was asking the SPC to promote him. That's what I heard. Whether after the transaction has passed or maybe due to other reasons, is it true that you requested for a promotion from the SPC?
Chairperson and honorable members.
Relax, Mr. Controlling Officer. When a member has finalized, I'll be giving you the floor. Controlling Officer, can you take that one?
Thank you very much, honorable Chairperson and honorable members present. The question by Chikwawa West. I would like to respond it in such a way that I want to mention that the office of the principal officer is the highest ranking establishment in the fund. So it's not true, so to speak, to say that I requested for a promotion because I'm already at the bar in the establishment of the fund.
Before you joined as a principal officer for the Public Service Pension Trust Fund, where were you working?
Thank you very much, Chair. I've worked in a number of ministries. I started my service in the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development in 2008. From there, in 2017, I went to the Ministry of Education. From Ministry of Education, I went to the Ministry of National Unity, Ministry of Unity. And from there, that's when I went to the Public Service Pension Trust Fund in 2021. Thank you very much, Chair.
What was your last position within
the public service?
Public service.
The chief economist.
So maybe just thinking aloud that you are still thinking that after serving in the fund, is the fund your final destination in terms of public service, or after you term you're supposed to go back into public service?
Thank you very much, Chair, for that question. At that point, Chair, I had made a decision that I've taken the route of a financial sector. Okay, so the Public Service Pension Trust Fund is a financial entity. So at this point in time, it was that I've made a different trajectory in my career path that I'm going into the financial sector. So there's no way that I'm going back to the public service.
Honourable members, I'll let it be at that point because traditionally, if you're not in public service, I think you cannot be the principal officer because you're supposed to be sent that side by the employer or unless it is different from the deed, from the trust deed.
Chair, the trust deed indicates that the appointment of the principal officer should be through secondment during its first 3 years of inception. So after the 3 years of inception, the board resolved that there will be no any other secondment from the public service. This was the case more so because it wanted to provide that autonomy from the public service. So from 2021, it was now decided by the fund that they are not going to get any seconded staff from the public service. The staff from Secretariat is going to be employed by PSPTF itself. So moving forward, the issue of secondment ceased to be in place at that point in time.
Thank you so much. Honor members, we can, okay, there's, I see Blantyre Chiromoni. Before we get to Blantyre Chiromoni, there's a supplementary from Chikwawa West. Chikwawa West.
Thank you very much. At what grade were you when you were suspended as a principal officer? At what grade?
Controlling officer?
So the principal officer is the PT1 in the fund. We use our own grades.
It simply means, as of now, you're no longer a public servant?
Yes.
You can't go back into public service?
No.
I saw a hand from Blantyre Chiromoni Kabula, Nancholi constituency. Over to you.
Through you, Chair, if you allow the people of Blantyre City, Chiromoni Kabula Nancholi constituency, some 7 to 10 minutes to interrogate the suspended principal officer.
Blantyre Chiromoni Kabula, I've always given you such a chance, but let me put it on record that within the settings, it's not allowed. But for the sake of this inquiry, I've always allowed you to do that. And tonight, it shall not be an exception. You get what you want. Controlling officer, at this point, we'll proceed in this way. I will not interject up until Blantyre Chiromoni Kabula finishes. So your 7 minutes starts now. Blantyre Chiromoni Kabula. We'll give you 10 minutes. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I think the key issue here is the meeting that happened on the 16th of March, 2024. In that meeting, there was Colin Zamba, Prince Kapondang Gaga, Mr. Jesus Sunyirongo, Boyd Hamera, and yourself, George Jim, according to the report which you presented to the pension fund. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Through you, Chair.
Mr. Kapondang Gaga, in the meeting, how was he introduced in that meeting?
He was introduced as the Chief of Staff, State Residences.
What was his input in the meeting? And if anything, what was the benefit of having him in that meeting?
Through you, Chair, do I take them as they come or I wait and come?
Mr. Suspended Principal Officer for the fund, I actually guided that as soon as he's done, I will not interject. As soon as he's done, he switches off his mic, then we switch on. When you're done responding, you switch off your mic, then he follows up directly. I will not come in between. This is the latitude or the chance that I've given by Blantyre Chiromoni and yourself, so that. But in the event that as we proceed, you feel that you need a break, don't hesitate. This is your parliament. Raise a hand. We can always break because you are a human being, and you deserve respect from your parliament. So in the event that you feel you need a break, don't hesitate. Kindly let us know. Over to you, Blantyre Chiromoni.
In that meeting, what was Mr. Kapondang Gaga's input? And if anything, what was the benefit, according to your judgment, of having him in that meeting?
Thank you very much, through you, Chair. From my recollection, he didn't say much in the meeting, as I think indicated by himself. I think I've been following keenly. One of his comments, I think, as I recollect, it was that he wanted to have a clear indication in terms of how our investments are done, in terms of the structure itself. So that's one of the things that I can recollect from the conversation that he engaged with the meeting. In terms of what benefit did he bring into the meeting, Chair, for fear of speculating, allow me not to answer that one, because it will now be my speculation into that.
Blantyre Lomoni. Maybe we'll proceed in this manner. We've been giving people a chance not to respond to other questions, but I've also been guided because we have colleagues that help this committee in terms of legal and other things. And we've been guided as your parliament, Public Accounts Committee, that we should give chance to controlling officer or stakeholders to respond. So having said that, you may reconsider your position, whether to respond or proceed that way.
No, Chair, let's proceed in that way.
Thank you so much. Blantyre Kabula, kindly proceed one-on-one with the controlling officer. Over to you.
Does an autonomous body like a pension fund get summoned for routine oversight by OPC?
Chair, through you, Chair. This time around, I think this was highlighted at the meeting to say the way the Public Service Pension Trust Fund operates is that it's an standalone entity, and that it answers to the employer through the Ministry of Finance, through the ST. However, as I indicated, and as well as the way it is highlighted in the report, the response that was given was that this was the mother entity of all public institutions. Therefore, all issues to do with public entities, they needed to take lead in that manner.
You mentioned that you were given orders. Who at OPC gave you orders?
Through you, Chair, these orders were issued through the Secretary to the President and Cabinet, Madam Colleen Zamba.
You said Madam Colleen Zamba issued directives. Did you understand at that time that you had a choice to refuse those directives, given your fiduciary duty to the pensioners?
Through you, Chair, no, I would say that at that time, it didn't occur to us because we highlighted the statutes that constitute the Public Service Pension Trust Fund. However, the SPC insisted that with or without that, still they are interested to have a stake in the proceedings of how the fund is managed. So at that time, through Chair, you note that the Office of the President at that time was the government. So the answer is no, Chair, at this point.
In your presentation, you said in hindsight, the commitment letters should not have been issued in that manner. When did you realize this?
Through you, Chair, again, maybe I did not bring it out clearly that after the letters were issued, during that time, they were issued in the presence of the committee chairperson. But later, I consulted the chairperson for the board, at that time, Mr. James Daire Kumwenda, indicating to him that in the meeting that we went, this is what transpired, and this is the directive that we were taught to do. However, this was during the quarterly meeting. As you know, that the meetings are done at a quarterly, in a quarterly basis. So it was a time that the letters had already been issued. But then the board chair at that time indicated to me that no, this wasn't actually supposed to be the case. So actually at that point in time, the board chair disowned these letters. So that's when I realized that I think probably this shouldn't have been done in this manner. Thank you, Chair.
Were you aware that at the time of issuing those commitment letters, you deliberately attempted to manufacture contractual obligations that didn't exist in the first place?
Chair, again, I will reiterate the same point to say at that material point in time, this was a directive from the high office in the public sector. So it was later then that we now digested the issue to say, no, what does this imply? That's when I indicated to say we had a remedial measure when we sought legal advice to see what was the actual implication of those letters. Thank you, Chair.
You mentioned earlier that there was a long time without a board this is when Colin Zamba and Chizaso Nyirongo were directly in communication with the seller and the secretariat. In your judgment and assessment, do you think that that vacuum in governance was deliberately created by Colin Zamba?
Chair and honorable member Kabula Nancholi, I will draw your attention to the letter that was actually written by Madam Colin Zamba, dissolving the board, the 3.1 board that I highlighted. It was a letter that was very powerful to say, you need to desist from doing any board business moving forward because they did not recognize that board, and probably they wanted nominees from their side to appear in the board that ensued later. So definitely they were frustrated with the fact that their nominees did not make it into the board during the first cut. So I think that's what I can say in that aspect, Chair. Thank you.
Section 10, subsection 1B of the trust deed says that MDAs must nominate. Why did Colin Zamba usurp the role of the MDAs? Number one. Number two, you mentioned that Tsitsi nominated the Chizaso Nyirongo. Is that correct? And if it's correct, in what capacity did the Tsitsi nominated Chizaso Nyirongo?
Thank you very much, Kabula Nancholi, through your chair. It is indeed true that Dr. Tsitsi nominated Mr. Chizaso Nyirongo into the board, and vice versa is true as well. I wouldn't be so sure in what capacity did they do this, but from my understanding from the meeting, 6th March meeting, it was indicated that the focal person for all the issues to do with the fund and OPC were supposed to be handled by Mr. Chizaso Nyirongo. I would also mention that we kept on going to the office of the Director for Legal Services, soliciting for these names, which took unnecessarily long despite our persistence and pleading that this was actually doing some damage to our governance system in the fund.
So the current board of trustees that bought the hotel is the board that was licensed and accepted in courts by Colin Zamba on the 15th July 2025. Is that correct?
That's correct, through you, Chair.
Is it also correct that when the blanket to dissolve all boards were issued, the Chief Secretary and the current Secretary of the Treasury, according to the trust deed, had no power to dissolve your board because of its autonomy and independence? Is that correct?
No, that's not correct.
What is correct?
Through you, Chair, according to our trust deed, Article 10.2 stipulates clearly that if the employer intends to do so in writing, they can revoke the licenses of the trustees from their employer side. So I believe that with that article, the Ministry of Finance through the ST still holds the power to do that. Thank you.
That's all from Blantyre Kabula for now. Thank you, Chair.
Blantyre Kabula, thank you so much. I see a hand from Zomba City North. Zomba City North.
Thank you, Chair. In extension to what Blantyre Shiromone Kabula has ended, I wanted to draw the attention of the suspended principal officer to the trust deed. That are you aware that according to the trust deed for the pension fund, the OPC has no specific role to play in the management of the fund? Is that true?
Controlling officer, over to you.
Through you, Chair, Zomba City North. Yes, I can confirm that's true.
Thank you, Chair. So having arrived at a resolution not to proceed with the transaction, and later on you rescinded by now carrying on the transaction that you had halted before, how did you reconcile this directive from the executive with the board's binding resolution of 17th January 2024 not to proceed? Did you feel you were being instructed to ignore a board's resolution?
Controlling officer, you may take that one.
Okay. Through you, Chair, can you repeat the question?
Zomba Sitinov, kindly take that one.
Thank you, Chair. You had attended that meeting that made the resolution not to proceed with the transaction on 17th January 2024. And then later on, you also participated in a meeting that resuscitated the transaction to proceed. So the question is, did you feel you were being instructed to ignore a board's resolution in your own thinking?
Through you, Chair, definitely I would confirm to say definitely there was an invisible hand before the board. Maybe I would also highlight to say there was an on-site examination by the regulator of financial institutions somewhere in July 2025, whereby they came up with a preliminary report. In these meetings, through you, Chair, what they do is they assess the institutional viability in terms of its risk management framework and all the aspects to do with the fund in terms of governance. So we had a one-on-one meeting with one of the chief examiners from the Reserve Bank of Malawi, whereby I highlighted this issue of political interference from the government side. I'm not so sure whether this was actually captured in that interim report, but I can confirm here that this was actually highlighted in that one-on-one meeting, which to me, I thought at that time maybe the regulator would pick it up to say there is some political interference in the management of the fund. Thank you very much, Chair.
Controlling officer, when you're looking at as a principal officer, at that stage, you were the secretary to the board. And now we're looking at issues to do with March 5th March 2024. But that board meeting occurred on the 17th of January 2024. As a secretary to that committee, having listened from Nico Asset Managers that this is not going to be viable, did you communicate to all board members in your capacity as a secretary to that board that professional advice has given us a direction that no, this we must suspend? Just to supplement on that one, and you can come in, Zomba Sitinov.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at how Office of the President and Cabinet being represented by Colleen Zamba, and in my own view, I feel that she was representing the principle of the land during that particular time. Looking at how the OPC overstepped its mandate as enshrined in the trust deed by number one, nominating the trustees and also influencing the decisions to be made by the board. Could the committee conclude that this was a coordinated racketeering?
Controlling officer, you may take those two.
All right, thank you very much, Chairperson and honorable members. I'll start with the one that you posed, Chairperson, to say, did I advise the board in terms of the decision that was made by the fund manager to say this is not a viable investment? Chair, I would highlight to say, as you mentioned, that the role of the principal officer is more or less like secretarial at that level. However, we also provide a bit of analysis, as I indicated in my presentation, to say from how we look, the perspective that the Secretariat has, so that it augurs with whatever expertise that we get from the different stakeholders. So at this point, Chair, it was highlighted that from Secretariat side, this investment would breach the mandate mix of the fund. I think the previous presenters also highlighted that the fund operates through an investment policy statement, which guides the fund in terms of which investment it can get into, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's equity, whether it's corporate bonds, all those have limits. So at that particular point in time, the question that was posed by Secretariat was that NICO or Continental, having the proportions that they have, I think maybe through you, Chair and honorable members, you've heard that Old Mutual has 50% of the fund's assets, Continental has 30%, and NICO has 20% of the fund assets. So the first question that was posed from NICO, to NICO at that point from Secretariat was, how are you going to absorb this investment looking at your portfolio? Definitely it was going to breach the mandate in terms of the property or other mandate mix of investment policy statement. So that was the advice that was given at that particular point in time to say, indeed, it looks like this is a far-fetched idea because we need to look at these parameters before we venture into that particular investment. So indeed, to answer your question, we echoed the very same sentiments, coupled with our own analysis to say it is very difficult at that point in time to absorb that investment, looking at the proportions that were allocated to those fund managers at that particular point in time. Coming to the question posed by Zomba City, to say, looking at how all this grant scheming took place, could we say that it was a coordinated scheme to have the fund proceed with the transaction? Through you, Chair, looking at the grand scheme of events, the way it happened, one wouldn't hesitate to say probably this was a bigger scheme, looking at a bigger picture at the end of the day. So probably, Chair, that's what I can speak to on that question posed by Zomba City.
There was Nkatabe Central. Nkatabe Central, please. Before we go to Nkatabe Central, there's a burning one from Zomba City. Zomba City, can you take to the floor?
Thank you, Chair. Once again, the resuscitation of this transaction happened during the meeting of 6th of March, where you attended, which was convened by Ms. Colini Zamba. Could we be wrong to say that for the transaction to see the light of the day, it was the influence of the former SPC? Thank you, Chair.
Controlling officer, can you take that one? That should be a yes or no. If I guide that way, Zomba City, will I be overstepping my mandate? Zomba City?
No, Chair, but suffice to say, maybe he could have an explanation to that. Let me explain.
Controlling officer, kindly be guided by Zomba City that you may take it so that you can offer an explanation. Maybe let him respond, then I come to you. Supplementary from Blantyre Chilomoni Kabula constituencies?
Not sure if I'd asked Chair through you on there, because in that particular meeting, there were instructions that they must conclude the hotel within 1 month. In your opinion, when you respond to Zomba, why do you think was Colini Zamba's interest to making sure that this deal is completed and done within that short period of time? Thank you.
Controlling officer, you may take that one from Zomba City, and at the same time, take a supplementary from Blantyre Chilomoni constituency. Over to you, controlling officer.
All right. Thank you very much, Chair. I will respond in such a way that, as I highlighted earlier on as well, to say if one has to look at the grand scheme of events, the way things were happening, starting from that 6th of March 2024 meeting, one would be left but wondering to say, why was this the case? To say it raised the interest of the highest office on the land at that particular point in time. And now looking at the sequence of events to say there was actually an action plan that was devised at the end of that meeting and that the fund had to follow through it. And probably I would also answer by tying into what Kabula also posed to say why was this being requested to be done within the shortest possible period. Again, it will also leave one wondering as to why was that the case. But the question was also posed in there in the meeting to say this cannot be done without the fund manager, as I indicated, and that the processes take longer than the request that was being made. And Chair, the reasons that were given as to why this has to be done in this manner was that there was a litigation that was pending, and again, there was a pressure from the seller at that point in time. So those were the reasons that were given, but then still there are reasons that leaves a lot to be desired, Chair, so to speak.
Who gave you that instruction that they are receiving pressure? Was that part of a discussion on the 5th of March 2024 that they are getting pressure from the seller?
Yes, Chair, I think it is indicated in the report to say in order to mitigate the pressure from the seller, there was need to write those comfort letters.
Who specifically told you that we are receiving this pressure? Because you, ideally, you're a controlling officer.
Yeah, Chair, the meeting was chaired by the SPC at that time, Madam Colleen Zamba. So she highlighted that there was pressure from the seller. Again, just to extend on the same, it was quite strange, as I highlighted, that some of the correspondences we were getting from the Office of the President and Cabinet, while the principal officer was there in the office, but then the correspondences came through the Office of the President and Cabinet.
In that meeting, controlling officer, as controlling officer, did you highlight the resolution which was made on the 17th January 2024 that the board had resolved not to proceed with the sale, despite all those pressure that you were receiving or others were receiving? Did you at any point highlight as a principal officer, as a controlling officer, to the SPC that, Madam, this is not right? The resolution of the board is as stipulated like this. Did you?
Thank you very much, Chairperson, for that question. The presentation was made during that meeting to say the investments of the fund are done in this manner, and this particular investment in question had stalled because of that particular reason that the fund manager had withdrawn, citing those reasons. All those specifics were presented in that meeting, Chair.
Honourable members, I had recognized Nkatabe Central. After Nkatabe Central, we'll give to the controlling officer to respond. Then we'll move to Mulanje Southeast. Then Chilazulu Nyong.
Thank you very much, Chair. Today, you are a changed person. I like the way you handled the Blantyre Chilomoni today, to give him time one-on-one. Blantyre Chilomoni spoke for all of us, and what he was interrogating was really what was in our mind. Thank you very much for that. I just have one question. The question I want to ask the principal controlling officer is that the meeting in Mzuzu on 6th of March was called by the former Chief Secretary of the Governor to the government, Madam Colleen Zamba. And at the end of that meeting, Madam Colleen Zamba issued a number of directives, one of which we have learned was that conclude the transaction within 30 days. What were the other directives? Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Nkatabe Central. You may take note that every time, if you revisit our engagements, you find that Blantyre Chilomoni has always been given time to interrogate, and it's been one-on-one. That has been his style. But I just wanted to refresh your memory on that one. You're a senior member, you should recollect on that one. Controlling officer, over to you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson and honorable members. To respond to a question posed by Nkatabe Central, that what other directives were given during that meeting, I think I mentioned when I was presenting to say the presentation was done in threefold: the overview of the fund, governance structure of the fund, and investments of the fund. So the directive on investment of the funds were those that the transaction had to be expedited and concluded. And on governance, the specific directive was that the nomination of trustees has to be through the Office of the President and Cabinet, that they were interested in taking part in the nomination process itself. That's another directive that was given in that meeting. Thank you.
Nkatabe Central, are you comfortable? Can we proceed? Mulanje Southeast, you may consider to take to the floor.
Thanks very much, Chairperson. The people of Mulanje Southeast were wondering whether they would enjoy the same benefits that their colleagues from Blantyre Kabula from time to time in this committee tend to enjoy. Honorable Chairperson, if you may indulge.
Mulanje Southeast, you may recall that even last week Thursday, you were given time to engage the controlling officer then on one-on-one. The same shall be applied. In the event that we are engaging other stakeholders, if you request, you shall be granted your wish. Your wish has been granted. Blantyre Kabula did that, so you deserve, because we are all equal as members of parliament. So in this case, controlling officer, I'll leave it so that Mulanje Southeast can ask a few questions pertaining to the fund and how the sale occurred. So the moment he asks, finishes the question, I'll not interject. You switch on your mic. When you feel that you've responded, switch off the mic. Then he's going to give you the second one. Over to you, Mulanje Southeast.
Much obliged, Chairperson. Mr. Jim, I just wanted to find out, for the record, what is your background?
Thank you very much. Mulanje Southeast, through you, Chair. My background is that I'm an economist by profession.
Were you appointed to the fund or you were seconded?
Thank you very much, Mulanje Southeast, through you, Chair, as well. I think I mentioned that during inception of the fund, most of the staff members of the fund were seconded during the first 3 years of inception of the fund, but then later, all the staff members of the fund were duly interviewed and appointed as such. So I'm currently an appointed member and substantive member of staff of the Public Service Pension Trust Fund.
What position were you holding in government when you were seconded to the fund?
I was the chief economist.
Which ministry?
Ministry of National Unity.
Do you remember holding a meeting on the 17th of January 2024? And if you would just refresh us, what type of meeting was it? Was it a board meeting or it was an ad hoc meeting?
Through you, Chair, which meeting specifically? The 17th?
17th of January 2024.
Yes, Chair. Through you, Chair. I recall.
Was it a board meeting or it was an ad hoc meeting? Do you remember who attended?
I just want to confirm, Chair.
You have space if you, because you've been submit. Can you switch off your mic? For a controlling officer, you have time. You can recollect via your documents, documental evidence that you've deposited with Parliament. You can use that, or you can use your emails, whatever you deem fit, so that you give accurate information. So you're free to do that. When you're ready, kindly signal so that you can ably respond to the question from Mulanje Southeast. Honourable members, those who feel that the energy levels are low, you're free to go outside for a few things, then you can actually walk in. Yeah, that's okay. That's in order. Especially those who have already asked questions and have been responded to. Those who are still thinking that they have issues to raise, kindly remain up until you do the needful. Controlling officer, we are waiting to hear from you.
Yes, Chair. I'm trying to confirm so that I capture the actual meeting that Mulanje Southeast is referring to. So, because he asked a question to say, do I remember that it was extraordinary meeting or an ordinary meeting? So that's where I'm now trying to confirm.
Honorable Chairperson, maybe I can help to refresh the stakeholder.
Kindly do so.
On the 17th of January 2024, you were called with chairpersons to Blantyre to meet your fund manager, and after meeting the fund manager, it is the time that the fund manager had indicated that they would not proceed with the investment into the Amaryllis, and you held a board meeting after that meeting with the fund manager. Yes or no?
I can confirm. So yes.
So you were basically the secretary of the board meeting that took place on the 17th of January 2024. Yes or no?
Yes.
Do you remember having issued the minutes of that particular meeting and the resolution that came forward in that meeting?
Yes, I can recall, Chair.
Do you remember the resolution that came out of that board meeting?
Yes, I can confirm, I remember.
What was the resolution?
The resolution was that the fund is going to withdraw the transaction altogether.
Was that resolution made by the board or it was made by the secretariat?
The resolution was made by the board.
When a board makes a resolution, what does it entail? For those of us that have never been on a board.
The resolution is, at that time, a binding decision that has been made by the board.
The decision of the board is binding. What would reverse a resolution of the board?
The resolution of the board would definitely be reversed by the board itself.
Fast forward to the 6th of March 2024, you are called to Mzuzu by OPC. Were you accompanied by any board member?
Yes, I can confirm. I was accompanied by a board member.
Did you report to your board when you came back from Mzuzu?
Yes, I can confirm that as well.
Do you have the communication that you used to confirm to your board when you came back from Mzuzu on the 6th of March?
Yes, I have.
It might benefit the committee to, Honorable Chairperson, to read that communication that was used to communicate to the board after the 6th. Thank you.
Controlling officer, do you have such a communication?
Chair, the communication that was made to the board was through the report that I submitted, and this was also documented in the minutes of that board meeting thereafter.
Blantyre Kabula, can you look for the minutes as we give him time so that we don't give him too much things, to give him time to digest some of the things. Mulanje Southeast, which minutes do you want to be specific?
Honorable Chairperson, I'm not looking for minutes. I'm looking for communication that the principal officer used to communicate to his board about the meeting of the 16th March.
Controlling officer, do you have that? Because he touched on the report. That's what he had highlighted, Mulanje Southeast. You may wish to be refreshed. Maybe you want that report read or kindly guide Mulanje Southeast?
Honorable Chairperson, I was on a trail and I had asked the principal officer whether after coming from the meeting from Mzuzu, he had reported to his board and he answered in the positive that he did. So I was looking for the evidence of that communication, Honorable Chairperson.
Controlling officer, over to you.
All right. Thank you very much, Chairperson. I communicated to the board through the report that I submitted after the 6th March meeting, and I indicated to say that this was also duly recorded in the minutes of that board meeting, of the 23rd ordinary board meeting of the trustees.
When did the 23rd meeting of the board take place? Or when did you communicate to the board?
Chair, I was trying to get hold of the 23rd ordinary board minutes, which I failed to do that, but I'm trying to get hold of them through my email. I'm sure this meeting was, I think, conducted in March or thereabouts.
Honorable Chairperson, I would be comfortable with the date, not the minutes.
Controlling officer. Mulanje Southeast wants the specific date.
Okay.
Please.
My colleague has assisted. He's saying it's on the 13th to 15th of March. Just confirm whether the dates are right.
Okay. Yes, from the records that I have, Chair, I can confirm.
So you had the ordinary board meeting between the 13th and 15th, yet soon after your meeting in Mzuzu on the 6th, on the 7th, you went ahead to write comfort letters to Yusuf Investment. Yes or no?
That's positive. That's a yes.
Who gave you the mandate to write those comfort letters before you had actually instructed your board?
It was the SPC.
So in this particular case, this honorable committee might not be wrong to assume that the SPC had taken the position of the board, yes or no?
Chair, I wouldn't say the SPC had taken the role of the chair of the board, but there were specific instructions that were given from the Office of the President and Cabinet at that time.
You have served the fund since 2017, and this was happening in 2024. You had been in position for 7 years, yet you could not see anything wrong with you writing comfort letters to a supplier before you got instructions from your board. There was nothing wrong with that?
Chair, as I highlighted that probably this was later realized that it wasn't supposed to be done in that manner. I highlighted earlier on to say that was an anomaly that I concede on my part. But I just wanted to indicate that there was that interference coming from that highest office in the land.
And by this time, you had seen the trust deed? Were you the custodian of the trust deed? Have you read the trust deed? Did you understand the trust deed?
Yes, Chairperson. I read and understood the trust deed.
And you, as Secretariat, you were the ones that were supposed to advise the board or advise any other stakeholder as regards to the mandate of the pension trust fund?
Yes, through you, Chair, that is correct, that the Secretariat has that right to advise the board and the fund. However, I am quick to point out to say there was that invisible hand that definitely one wouldn't miss to say there was that undue pressure coming into the fund.
Invisible hand. Let me just roll. I'll be done in the next 2 minutes, Chairperson.
Maybe let's respect his wisdom and integrity. Proceed, Mulanje Southeast.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Is it true that in the ordinary meeting of the 13th, the 23rd ordinary board meeting, between the 13th and the 15th of March, the board actually rejected the initiative to go ahead with buying Amaryllis again?
Yes, Chair. The board just reaffirmed its position to say, based on the expert advice that was given by NAM, the fund still will not move forward in that front.
And you had advised the board about the pressure that you were getting from above?
Yes, I did.
Did you withdraw your comfort letter?
Chair, at that point in time, the idea was actually to withdraw those commitment letters. I think moving forward, I think that's why it was indicated that they were withdrawn. However, on the part of the seller, they insisted that those still hold.
Did you withdraw the letters, yes or no?
Chikwawa West, what has gone out of order?
Thank you very much. Sorry, Mulanje, Southeastern, I wanted to add on what you have asked, because even after the 13th to 15th March 2024 meeting, there's a letter dated 18th March 2024 in which the principal officer wrote Amaryllis Hotel giving out another commitment to proceed with the sale. So I wanted to check if he's not contradicting himself, because you said he withdrew the letters. But on 18th March, he wrote another letter. If I can read it, Chair, with your permission.
Controlling officer, I want you to chill, relax, so that we proceed in a procedural manner. Mulanje Southeast has asked several questions, and that has triggered Chikwawa West on a supplementary. Controlling officer, allow me to ask Chikwawa West to lead that letter. Chikwawa West, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. 18th March 2024, reference number PSPTF 18/03/24, Amaryllis Hotel, Sec 2 Laws Roads, PO Box 279, Blantyre. Dear Sir, commitment to the Amaryllis transaction process. We refer to our commitment letter dated 7th March 2024, wherein we advised you that the fund is committed to finalizing the Amaryllis Hotel equity transaction in the shortest possible time. We are pleased to advise you that a new fund manager is willing to review and complete the transaction. In light of this, the fund manager is envisaging to review and close this within a month at least. Yours faithfully, George M. Jimu, Principal Officer. My follow-up question would be, what motivated you to write another letter, and yet you are informing this committee that you withdrew all the commitments letters? Thank you very much, Chair. Over to you, Mulanje Southeast. Thank you.
Maybe before we go to Mulanje Southeast again, we're still holding the floor. Listening to the letter that Chikwawa West has led to this committee, please explain to the committee why you issued these letters when a valid board resolution to withdraw from the deal was still in place. You were aware of that kind of resolution. As a secretary to that board, you knew, but you went on to issue such kind of letters. What actually motivated you? That's what is coming from Chikwawa West. Controlling officer?
All right. Thank you very much, Chair. I would answer it in twofold to say it was at that very same board meeting that Continental also presented their proposal to say they had received an instruction from Cedar Capital to proceed and arrange for the transaction to proceed. So again, I think it was at that meeting where CAM now was advised to use their own independent analysis if they are to proceed with that particular kind of investment. So that was another area that probably also would say resuscitated the transaction in that particular period in time before it was officially withdrawn from Continental Asset Managers at that point in time. Again, on the letter of the 18th of March commitment or comfort letter, this was actually based on the directive as well from the SPC. I think I can provide some documentary evidence at some point if need be.
So, Honorable Chairperson, the stakeholder is actually confirming before your honorable committee that he did not follow the instructions from his own board, but rather followed instructions from SPC. Is that correct? So that the record is kept straight. Thank you.
Controlling officer.
Chair, as I indicated, to say, the way I answered it, to say it was in twofold, to say the transaction was now resuscitated through Continental Asset Management. And the letter was issued on 18th after that board meeting where Continental indicated to say they want to proceed with the transaction based on the request from the Cedar Capital, arranger of Yusuf Investment Limited.
What has gone out of order, Blantyre Chiromon?
Something is not adding up, because if you follow the timeline, that's the reason why I wanted to toe the line of Mulanje. Because on the 23rd board meeting on the 13th and 15th March, the board was notified that the fund was summoned by Colin Zamba to make a presentation on the performance of the fund. In that meeting, Colin Zamba had recommended that the fund should proceed with the investment. In the end, the board resolved that the decision that was made in January was given by professional advice, and therefore the decision not to purchase the hotel was not going to be reversed. This is on the 15th. 3 days later, Chair, he is following up with a comfort letter. So this is because this time they had a board. This is a board decision to say we are reaffirming our position of January. And this is on the 15th of March. 3 days later, he is still issuing another instruction. It means at that time, Colin Zamba was the board. That he could listen to Colin Zamba because he says he's got a letter that Colin Zamba gave him. Now he's trying to run away from accountability by blaming Colin Zamba. Colin Zamba was not the board. Between your board, because your board made a decision on the 15th to say we are not proceeding. Whatever excuse you're going to give us, you are trying just to hang Colin Zamba because choosing, but as far as the events are concerned between the 15th and the 18th, Colin Zamba actually had more powers, unless you are telling this committee that Colin Zamba had more powers than the board. And that's why you actually didn't take advice from your board, you took advice from Colin Zamba. I submit, Chair. I thought that should come out very clear. Thank you.
Controlling officer, I think you've heard very clear and straightforward from Blantyre Chiromoni. Controlling officer, you were coming from a meeting with Colin Zamba and other colleagues in Mzuzu on 5th March 2024. I want to draw your attention to the letter that you wrote on 7th March 2024. 2 days later, and I'll go through it. PO Box Public Saves Pension Trust Fund, Amaris Hotel, reference number PSPTP/07/03/24, 7th March 2024. Amaris Hotel, 2 Rose Road, PO Box 279 Blantyre. Dear sir, commitment to the Amaris transaction process. Reference is made to the above captioned matter. I am writing to advise that the Public Service Pension Trust Fund is still interested in completing the transaction towards the purchase of Amaris Hotel. You may have noted that the transaction stalled, but I am writing to offer the assurance that notwithstanding the delays, the fund is clearing a few operational issues that stalled the transaction, and once these are cleared, the fund is going to share with you for your reaction a proposed roadmap for the completion of the transaction. In light of the steps already taken in this transaction, the fund is looking forward to finalizing this transaction in the shortest possible time. Yours faithfully, George M. Jim, Principal Officer. I'll take you straight to your letter on the 18th of March. Okay, commitment to the Amaris transaction process, where you wrote, We refer to our commitment letter dated 7th March 2024, the one I've just read, wherein we advise you that the fund is committed to finalizing the Amaris Hotel equity transaction in the shortest possible time. We are pleased to advise you that a new fund manager is willing to review and complete the transaction. In light of this, the fund manager is envisaging to review and close this within a month at the least. Yours faithful, George Jim. Are we together, controlling officer?
Yes, we are, Chair.
So looking at the question from Mulanje Southeast and what emanated from Chikwawa West and Blantyre Chiromoni, can you reconcile these basing on the letters which you signed, completely ignoring the resolution of the board to which you are the secretary? Then you had to put it aside and proceeded to issue comfort letters, and the other one coming 2 days after your engagement in Mzuzu. Can you clear yourself on these things, controlling officer?
All right. Thank you very much, Chairperson. As I highlighted earlier on to say these were directives that were coming from that office. And I indicated earlier on to say later we realized that probably this wasn't the best decision that I could have ever made at that particular point in time. So starting from the one that was written on 7th, that was definitely immediately after the meeting, as it was requested at that point in time that this is something that needs to be done urgently. So it was done, Chair. I will concede that that was actually something that I mentioned to say in hindsight that wasn't supposed to be done in such a way. And then later, at on 18th March 2024, another one was also issued. As I said, that probably this was basically through that invisible hand that I just highlighted to say they indicated that there is pressure. And at this point in time, it was that Continental Asset Management had already been approached by Cedar Capital to say they are going to consider looking at the investment, do the proper analysis, and probably report to the board. So definitely that was another leeway that at that point in time, I could say the letter was written, but still these were written under that duress that was coming in from that office. As I indicated as well, that probably I could provide that documentary evidence to that effect. Thank you, Chair.
There's a point of order from Chilazo Lunyungwe. Chilazo Lunyungwe, please.
Thank you, Chair, for acknowledging the point of order. During his submissions, the suspended officer has made reference to pressure coming from the SPC, who he's rightly named as Madam Colleen Zamba. But he's also made reference to an invisible hand. An invisible hand would be an unseen force that's also pushing this. He's mentioned the SPC being the highest office, or the OPC being the highest office. We also have the highest officer in the OPC. This might be the president. Without any fear, can he please mention whether this invisible hand is the president, the former president Jaguera, or if when he says invisible hand, he's still referring to Colleen Zamba, in which case he's already mentioned her name. Therefore, for the sake of records, maybe it is a bit confusing if he refers to the two as two different entities. Thank you so much, Chair.
Controlling officer, Chilazo Lunyungwe is looking for confirmation. Can you come out clearly?
Yeah, thank you very much.
This is specifically on being invisible, because at some point you mentioned Colleen Zamba, Miss Colleen Zamba. Then at some point you're talking of invisible hand. So Chilazo Lunyungwe wants you to come out clear. Over to you.
All right. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Apologies to have used that word invisible hand. As I said, my background is an economist, so when we say an invisible hand, we mean that undue influence. But in this case, Chair, I would still say this influence was coming from the Office of the President and Cabinet through Madam Colleen Zamba. So that's what I'm referring to. I can confirm, Chair.
Honourable members, I think Mulanje Southeast, you are still handling that floor. Can you wind up?
Much obliged, Honourable Chairperson. I think I will not go back to the very same questions that my colleagues have extended on. I just wanted to find out, do you have, did you have a personal relationship with anybody in OPC?
No, Chair, I can confirm.
How many times were you ever included on trips from the OPC going outside the country as an officer of the pension fund?
There has been none from the OPC, Chair.
How many times within the period in question have you ever been to Dubai?
On the official capacity?
I didn't specify.
None, Chair.
Within the indicated time, you have never been to Dubai on official duties or on personal duties? On record, remembering that you are deponing to this committee under oath.
Yes, Chair. I can confirm.
When was the last time that you were in Dubai?
I think it was it December 2024.
And a minute ago, you just said you have never been in Dubai?
No, I meant on official capacity and in that particular time that you were referring to.
You went to Dubai on a personal capacity. For how long were you in Dubai and how many times did you go there in your personal capacity?
Chair, I don't know whether you want me to count all official trips that I went where I was in public service up to the time that I went on my private holiday.
You just indicated to this committee that you have never gone there on official visits, but on personal capacities. And are you not contradicting yourself if you say, should you count the official ones and the personal ones?
Okay, so through you, Chair, I thought you were referring to the time that I was in the Public Service Pension Trust Fund. I've ever been to Dubai, where I was in the Ministry of Education. That was a training that was organized by the ministry.
I'm listening. The people of Mulanje Southeast are still listening.
Okay. So on the other hand, I think it was on a private holiday in December 2024.
How many times have you been there on personal holiday?
Once.
How long were you there?
For a week.
Who accompanied you?
My family.
No further questions, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you so much. I think we go to Chilazulu Nyungwe. Point of what has gone out of order, blunt ceremony.
Chair, I'm looking at the letter dated 27th of October 2025, the suspension letter. What the board finds in him, which I'm also finding now, is deception and dishonest, which is one of the reasons that the board found as his character. Said deception and dishonest conduct of the board. And Chair, I will bring you to the second paragraph. The board is aware that you subsequently accepted to have authored the letters and refused to give a report when requested, but submitted a purported unsigned and unauthenticated record of the meeting in Zuzu, where you allege that you were coerced to have written the letters. Your denial of this communication constitutes deceitful conduct and a serious breach of duty. Because you seem to have to accept that the letters were yours. You seem to accept that, no, you never issued the letters, even to your own board. And they are saying, and when we asked you the questions here, which you're not coming out very, very clearly, to say, you time and time again disobeyed. And Mulanje had asked you a very good question. If the board decides that we're not going to proceed with the sale, who is supposed to then make a decision to say we should proceed with the sale? And you said it's the same board. Now, the same board on the 13th and 15th said we are not going to proceed with the sale. You, in your personal capacity and the pressure you got from Colin Zamba, as you are claiming, issued another comfort letter on the 18th of March, 2025, to Amaryllis Hotel, ignoring board's advice. And the board is saying the same here. You're conspiring with others to undermine the authority of the board. These are some of the grounds that they have suspended you for. So, if you keep going back and forth, Chair, can the principal officer tell this committee why we should trust anything that's coming out of his mouth? I submit, Chair.
Blantyre Chilomon, you're now making findings of the inquiry. So can we restrict to getting information so that the findings we can reach at the findings at a later stage? Maybe if I guide the committee that way, it will help, so that the principal officer gets to have that comfort. Principal officer, you said you were seconded to the fund in 2017. Who seconded you to the fund in 2017?
Chair, it wasn't actually in 2017 that I was seconded to the fund. It was in 2021. 2020, 2021, that period. In 2017, I was there as one of the trustees of the fund. So in terms of secondment, I was seconded there through the Department of DHRMD and the Ministry of Economic Planning and Development.
So in 2020, 2021, can you switch off your mic? In 2020, 2021, as you are alleging, who seconded you to the fund?
Chair, it was Department of Human Resource and Development through the Ministry of Economic Planning and Development. Because at that time, I was a member of the Economic Common Service. So the secondment is done through the line ministry, and it is endorsed by the Department of Human Resource and Development.
Can you switch off your mic? So why were you under pressure from Ms. Colleen Zamba, SPC, when in the first place you were never seconded to that institution by her? Why?
Chair, I think I mentioned earlier on to say these were issued as directive from the Office of the President and Cabinet. At that time, it was quite clear to say we had to abide by the directive from that office.
We had recognized Blantyre Chilazulu Nyungwe. From Chilazulu Nyungwe, we'll go to Vice Chair, which is Lilongwe Chilobwe. Blantyre Chilazulu Nyungwe, your time.
Thank you, Chair. I'm interested in moving forward from the commitment letters. I want to draw your attention to the 25th of October, the meeting in which we see the board chair, Mr. Chizaso Nyirongo, coming up with the decision without maybe perhaps knowledge of other board members, coming up with a decision to continue with the investment, and a few days later you get suspended. But I want you, as someone that was a principal officer in that meeting, you might have been privy to perhaps some information or some sort of motivation as to why he would go ahead to introduce the idea of going forward with the purchase, regardless of advice that had come from different parties, and especially this was after it coming out clear that the transaction cannot proceed without a fund manager. So I want to tap into that privilege that you had to being present in such a meeting. What would motivate such a decision coming out to come up with these resolutions? And then maybe you getting suspended a few days later might be not of a coincidence after all. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you, Chilazulu Nyungwe. Controlling Officer, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair and honorable members. I think he has rightly put it to say I was indeed in that particular meeting where that decision was being made to say the resolution that was done previously was going to be rescinded. Chair, I mentioned to say we made a presentation as Secretariat based on the analysis that we did and the previous analysis that were done by the other fund managers, so that it informs the board in terms of the decision that they were supposed to undertake. So I mentioned also to say we as Secretariat, our role ends at just providing that advice. It's up to the board to take that advice up or not. So to say what motivated the board chair at that particular point in time to say, let's still proceed despite the advice that was given, still I would point you to the issue of litigation that he kept on bringing to say there was a pending litigation that we needed to evade. I recall that there were some other board members who mentioned to say that before maybe we proceed to look into those issues, there was an opinion that was presented before the board as well to say if we were to go into litigation, our chances of winning stand at 80 in terms of the odds that were there at that particular point in time. And another one also pointed to the need for prior analysis into the investment before quickly going into having a resolution to proceed with the transaction. So all these advice were given, but still the answer from the board chair or the direction from the board chair was that still we needed to proceed and move with speed to finalize the transaction. So in terms of what the motive was, to me, I'm not quite so sure what the motive was, but the insinuation was that we needed to evade that litigation that was pending. So we needed to proceed.
Thank you, Controlling Officer, for responding to Chilaz Lunyungwe. Can I go to Lilongwe Chilobwe? Lilongwe Chilobwe, please. I see Lilongwe East. So we Lilongwe Chilobwe, please. Then Lilongwe East. I see Zomba Msondole as well. We'll get to you.
Thank you, Chair. I really appreciate your energy. Won't you need a break a bit before we go on?
No, it's fine, Chair. We can proceed.
Thank you. All right. Where was the decision to issue the letters made?
Controlling Officer, maybe Lilongwe Chilobwe, you have several questions or?
No, I have several.
Like I've given a chance to Blanta Chilomoni. So the case with Zomba City North and the Mulanje Southeast, I think I'll be fair enough to give you that chance. So in this case, you ask direct to the Controlling Officer, and the Controlling Officer will respond. As soon as you're done, you switch off your mic, and the Controlling Officer will respond. And after that, you switch off the mic, then you do that way. Thank you.
Thank you. The Controlling Officer, I think you got my first question.
Yes, Lilongwe Chilobwe, through you, Chair. I got your question to say when was the decision to proceed with the transaction done? This was done in that meeting in Isuzu.
Now, can you switch the mic off? Now, my question is where? So your first is in Zuzu, right? Okay. What are the examples of decisions you made as a principal officer in absence of the board?
Chair, there are a number of decisions that have been made in the absence of the board, but not necessarily that are supposed to be made by the board itself, because I mentioned to say there was a period that the fund operated without the board. So definitely there were a number of decisions that were made. For instance, the issues to do with the payment of the fees of some other fund managers and stakeholders of the fund, which eventually we compiled everything to be ratified by the board itself. And this was done during the first meeting of the Finance and Audit Risk Management Committee when the committees made. So that's one example of the decisions that were made in the absence of the board, but were later ratified by the board, by the committee rather.
Okay.
Lilongwe Chilobwe, there's a supplementary from Zomba City North. Zomba City North.
Thank you, Chair. Could another example be a letter without prejudice that you wrote on 29th May 2025 to Yusuf Investments Limited, proposing a meeting which took place on 5th June 2025?
Zomba City North. Controlling officer, can you recall the contents of that letter on top of your head, or you may want Zomba City North to freshen you up?
Through you, Chair, I would request maybe Zomba City if he can refreshen me up.
Zomba City North, please.
Chair, did you issue any letter without prejudice to Yusuf Investments Limited on 29th May 2025?
Yes, Chair.
So could that be one example that you made a decision without the board, on top of the example that you have mentioned when the Lilongwe Chilobwe asked you a question?
Thank you very much, Chair. As I may be requested to say, maybe if I can look at the contents of that letter, because from my recollection, a decision was not made in any of the meetings that we had with either Yusuf Investment Limited or any other party that we met as regards the transaction. The message was consistently clear that we did not have a board at that particular point in time, and therefore anything to do with the board decision had to wait for the board if it's instituted, so that it can be tabled at that particular point in time. But none of a board decision was made through my office. So as I mentioned to say, my office acts as a hub of correspondences from all the stakeholders that are there, whether the fund managers and the board. So in this case, there was no board, but still correspondences were still coming into my office. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Controlling Officer. At this stage, because that was just a supplementary on what Lilongwe Chilobwe had asked, allow me to hand over to Lilongwe Chilobwe to proceed. Lilongwe Chilobwe, please.
Thank you, Chair. The other one, from previous investments that were made on the funds, did you ever seek an approval from OPC or the Ministry of Finance before? Like this Garege issue, I understand you bought that thing into Lifestyle or something like that. Did you ever seek an approval from the Finance Ministry or OPC?
Chair, from my recollection, I think when those investments were made, a report was furnished to the Ministry of Finance for their noting, because what we do normally is that we report on a quarterly basis to the Ministry of Finance on that basis. So from my recollection, what was done was a report was submitted to the Ministry of Finance to that effect. But again, as I said, that those were now board decisions at that level, because the office of the principal officer ends at that level, whereby we do not make decisions of the board.
So you meant to say you cannot do such a purchase without the Ministry of Finance knowing?
Chair, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that the Ministry of Finance was notified through the quarterly report that we normally submit on all the investments and overview of the fund.
But can you make such, let me know, can you make such a big purchase without the Ministry of Finance knowing?
Chair, the Ministry of Finance has to know what is going on in the fund. So I would say no, the Ministry of Finance has to know.
Do you think the Ministry of Finance knew about the purchase of Amaris?
Through you, Chair, I wouldn't be in the best position to respond to that question, since the transaction has been finalized when I was not in the fund.
but you have been in the system for quite a number of years, since 2021 up to 2026. From your past experience, do you think the Ministry of Finance knew about this?
Chair, still, I will reiterate the same response to say I wouldn't know because I wasn't in the office at that particular point in time. As I mentioned that I got my suspension letter on 27th of October, 2025. So I wouldn't know what kind of correspondences went to the Ministry of Finance in terms of the Amaris transaction.
When you were buying Sigerege, how did the transaction go?
Chair, when the fund was procuring Sigerege, as I mentioned, that ordinarily what is supposed to be done is that these investments are supposed to be anchored by a fund manager. Actually, it was a surprise to me when I read through the papers that the Amaris transaction was done without a fund manager. I'm also yet to learn from that part to say how is that possible, because the responsibility of doing all those analyses that were done by EMJ, procuring all the service providers.
Point of order. Before I come to you, controlling officer, just 2 minutes ago, you were unable to attempt anything to do with the sale beyond your exiting of the board. But just a few minutes later, you were able to highlight that you're not even, you're surprised that there were no investment managers who were involved. Kindly decide on one position, and that footing, you stand on that footing. It will help to protect the integrity of the institution that you saved, to protect your own integrity, and to protect your future as one of the young economists in this country. There was a point of order from Blantyre Kabula. What has gone out of order? Blantyre Kabula, please.
I just want to bring it to his attention that the sale of Amaryllis was actually done by a fund manager, and not that there was no fund manager involved. Actually, money came. I can go and refer to exactly the first 19 billion came from Old Mutual, and then there was 28 billion that also came from Old Mutual. There was 1 billion that came from Old Mutual, and then there was I think about 38 billion that came from Continental Asset Managers. So in terms of making that particular payment, and I'm surprised you were there, that's why you should have just concentrated to respond to say what happened when you were buying Sigerege Hotel. If you issue letters, whom did you issue those letters to? Who did you instruct? And when the fund manager wants to pay, what are the documentation that are required? That was straight, because you are trying to go to Amaryllis and provide information that you actually don't even know about that information. But the reality from Reserve Bank of Malawi and the records that we have seen as a committee, the payments were actually made by fund managers. So there's no way that fund managers didn't know about the transaction. I just wanted to make sure to make sure that he does not mislead the committee chair. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Blantyre Chiromoni Kabula Nancholi. That point of order has been sustained. Lilongwe Chirobwe, please.
All right. The controlling officer, are you telling this committee that the Minister of Finance is not represented in the board?
Thank you very much, Lilongwe Chirobwe, for that question. But Chair, allow me to probably maybe clarify the issue that I was highlighting, that I think Blantyre Kabula indicated that maybe to clear the facts in terms of how the fund operates. With your indulgence, Chair, I would like to clarify to say every fund manager holds a portfolio in the fund. So by insinuating that there was no anchoring fund manager of this particular transaction, what I mean is that ordinarily a transaction is supposed to come through a fund manager, and that investment sits in the portfolio of that fund manager. in this case, Kabula is indicating that money came from 2 or 3 different fund managers to purchase the transaction. Now it leaves with a question to say, under whose portfolio is this investment falling on? Under. Because if you to talk about Sigerege falls under Continental Asset Managers. So if this investment doesn't perform, the fund will look at Continental Asset Management to say, you brought us this investment, it's underperforming. What is it that you are going to say about this investment? This is done deliberately because there's monitoring mechanism that is put in place. There are benchmarks that these fund managers are given, that for whatever investment that they are bringing to the fund, there is a benchmark that we've given them. It's 5% plus inflation at that particular point in time. So let's say this investment that we're talking about has been purchased through these different fund managers. Under whose custody are you going to press it? Who are you going to monitor at the end of the day to say this investment is not performing? So I just wanted to highlight in terms of how this fund operates to say each and every investment that comes in is supposed to be anchored by a fund manager under whose portfolio this thing is also going to fall. So that's why I was saying that it is actually quite surprising to say there is no anchoring fund manager in this case. So when you come to monitoring and evaluation, who are you going to place accountability on in this case? Because the fund is not supposed to be first-hand doing investment itself. That's what I was trying to mention. So maybe, Chair, you allow me to proceed to answer the question by Lilongwe Chirobwe to say, is the fund not represented by any member from the Ministry of Finance? The answer is to say, yes, there's a representation from the Ministry of Finance because we have a trustee. I think there's Chikondi Piri, who comes from the Ministry of Finance. So by design, that one represents the interest of the Ministry of Finance, if I'm to answer your question.
So you mean the Ministry of Finance knew about this transaction through Chikondi Piri?
Through you, Chair, if that's the case, that's what we can insinuate at this point in time. But I wouldn't be so quick to point out to say that trustee reported to the Ministry of Finance.
Chikondi Piri, you are the one who has mentioned her, or him, if he's a man or a female, is representing the Ministry of Finance. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
So I'm asking, did the Ministry of Finance have a representative in your board?
Yes, Chair.
Meaning the Ministry of Finance knew about this?
Through the representation from the Ministry of Finance, I would say yes, through that trustee.
I do not want to say what Blantyre Kabula said about your integrity and the way you're answering, but I just want you to be straightforward. Did the Ministry of Finance knew about the Amaris transaction through its representative or what?
Lilongwe Chirobwe, Chu, relax. Our controlling officer. I want, as a human being, because we had someone due to at 5:30, I want to suspend the proceedings for 5 minutes so that you can stretch, and we get back into this room after 5 minutes, so that you can stretch, walk around, and make sure that everyone is at peace. And that also give time to those who are working, so that they can stretch as well, because they've been covering Parliament from 9:30 a.m. Soon after that, they had to set up in this room. So we just give it 5 minutes so that they can also stretch. Honourable members, allow me to suspend the proceedings for just 5 minutes. Thank you.
Osaiwala kupanga subscribe ku channel ya AMTV Malawi.